Yeah, yeah. The world is so small till it ain't. Yeah. I'm building up a wall till it breaks. She hate it when I call and it's late. I don't wanna keep you waiting. I hope
Hi,
Hello.
how are you doing? You
I'm
look
good.
amazing. I was just complimenting you with your hair and everything.
Yeah, I
You look
appreciate it. Thank
amazing.
you so much. It's
And
new. I'm trying to get used to it still, but
no, it looks amazing. Literally.
thank
I
you.
just told you I could never have the courage to do that, so kudos to you. But maybe soon,
Appreciate it.
if you influence
Hopefully.
me in a good way, I will probably do the
Yeah.
same thing.
Love that.
Welcome to Whom We're Becoming,
Thank
Audrey.
you.
We're so honored. I'm so honored. The way I'm saying we, because if there's somebody else here, I'm so honored to have you. And this never
Thank
gets
you.
old. It's always new because everybody that I talk to is so different and has different ideas and different, we're talking about different things. So
Mhm.
it's always an honor and a pleasure.
I
Of
appreciate it. It's a
course.
huge deal for me too. I love being here. I'm excited.
Okay, that's a good sign. That's a good sign.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
so far I've never had somebody say, "Oh, I've been forced to be here," so that's a good sign.
That would be horrible,
I
Could you
know. I
imagine?
cut this whole. I'd be like, "Cut the show. We're
Yeah.
done."
Forget it. Yeah.
Um, Audrey, your full name is Audrey Gwiza, but of course I'm going to give you the chance to introduce yourself to everybody else that does not know you. But I fell in love with you when I first saw your Instagram videos. She has
Mhm.
this little aesthetic that she has that she sits on a couch and she just like reads our minds and tells us everything that we've been thinking down there that we're not open to talk about. And
Yeah.
it was like, this is like the outside version of me. Wow.
Um,
And I was so proud and so inspired. And I was like, I need to talk to you and I need to,
mhm.
um, I have, I have been doing this for a couple of months now. So it's not
Yeah.
yet a big, huge platform. This is called To Whom We're Becoming. So it's a platform where I talk about different topics. I'm a woman, I'm a girl in her 20s. I'm not gonna say I have so much experience in so many areas of my life, but I try not to narrow
Mhm.
myself down into one box. I try to um, explore everything that my 20s has to offer. So, academically, emotionally, spiritually, everything that I go through on a daily basis. And I talk about it on my blog on Substack, but I also had very many recommendations from my friends tell me, we need to see this on video. We need to see you inviting people because they were like, where do you get all these thoughts? And I'm like, I have interesting conversations with interesting people.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay,
Yeah.
we need to see those people. And I'm like, they're here. Hey, hi.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm excited
Yeah.
to have you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So I'm excited to have you. I'm going to give you 2 to 3 minutes to present yourself, tell us more about you because I know you, but the people watching probably don't know you. And then we can go
Mhm.
from there with today's topic.
I appreciate it. You said 3 minutes. I'm like, do I have content for 3 minutes? But just
It
like
doesn't have to
you,
be.
I'm listen. No, but just like you, I'm a girl in my 20s. I think this is the most exciting part of life for sure, the most exciting season. Where you're allowed to explore, get to explore who you are, what you want for yourself, what kind of life you want to create, how to create it, your culture, your spirituality. Like there's a lot of things that we're in the space of developing and exploring. And so I'm in the midst of that and I'm enjoying it. While on the journey, I've explored just how much I love to speak and write. And so I will say that that's something that comes at the forefront of who I am as a person. I use my speaking and my writing to advocate for the youth, for young girls specifically, because that's something that's very close to my heart. To speak about my culture and my continent, because I'm not only super in love with being Rwandan, but also being African as a whole. And mostly I do that through social media. And so that's a big part of who I am right now. Who I'm growing into, I think is a good one right now. I want to get into doing even more work for the continent, creating change, whether it's policies that don't fit us anymore, or it's just culture shifts that need to happen, just conversations that need to raise awareness. All that is something that I'm working towards right now. And yeah, as a person, I'm a lover of life, I like to say. I'm
We
extremely
see
bold.
that. Yeah.
Listen, I think there's so much to live for. I think life is so exciting. And so that's something I definitely use as like a description of who I am as a person. Um, and yeah, I think that's about it. You know, you can't speak of yourself as a whole. Like there's so much,
Absolutely.
but
There's like
I
different,
think
the reason why
yeah.
I named this whole platform to Whom We're Becoming when I started writing was because I realized that I become a different person every single day.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And sometimes I was like, okay, maybe that's just mood swings, but that has nothing to do with mood swings. There's things that I tolerated or engaged in last year that I no
Mhm,
longer do this year
mhm.
because I feel like they've evolved and they've changed from a person I was before to the person I am today. And
Yeah.
the way I see things, the way some perspectives I used to have, some conversations I used to involve myself in. And today I'm like,
Mhm,
I'm not going to go there because that does not uplift me in any way personally
mhm,
or anybody in my surrounding. So there's
mhm.
different aspects that we become in our 20s because I feel like those are the years that we become who we're meant to become, of course. Sometimes we
Mhm,
figure it out in our 20s, which is what the whole platform is about. And sometimes
mhm.
we don't. We wait 30s, 40s, 50s.
Right, right.
Then eventually we spend our whole life becoming. So that's what
Mhm.
this whole platform was about when I started, and it
Uh,
still is. I'm
yeah.
so glad to see that I'm entering this. You're actually my first guest this year. I'm so excited.
Oh, that's
Of
exciting.
course.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see how that's gonna evolve this year because I want to be
Mhm,
more consistent and more involved in this. And
mhm,
diving into today's topic, I did share it with
mhm.
you beforehand, which was
Yeah.
talent or survival, who gets to choose their dream. So, what I meant by this topic when I shared it with you, and I was so happy that you agreed to talk about it, was that we're both African girls. We had the opportunity to move abroad. That's where we live and study most of our time. And I would say the years of like changing and actually becoming mature people. I'm not saying when we were, back home we were thinking in like mature people, but I'm just saying when you move out of your parents' home and you get an actual house and you do some things, you have a certain level of like thinking that kind of like moves from one stage to another. So in this case,
Mhm,
I wanted to talk about different questions when it comes to that specific aspect of talent or survival. What I wanted us to talk about was in African households, mostly, when we're growing, of course, we're going to school, we're encouraged
yeah.
to engage ourselves in very specific boxes. So I'm talking education wise, it's you're either studying math, you're gonna become a doctor or an engineer, an
Mhm,
architect, something really that has like a heavy name that has nothing to do with what you're probably good at talent wise.
mhm,
And
mhm,
we even move abroad to broaden those studies and become much more open with them. So, or
mhm,
maybe more understanding that which is another topic for another day, that for some reason people still think that African universities or African schools cannot give you such knowledge. But that's
mhm,
a story or conversation for another day. That
mhm,
to an extent where we have to move abroad all the way. So I wanted to understand when we get in Western countries and abroad, we see a different side. So in this
mhm,
case, nobody's forcing kids like us or children like us to fit into a certain box, to do certain things. It's everything goes with what you're good at, with what you feel like your future, with how you see your future. So you're given the platform to actually envision your future, whereas back home, that's not the case. That has not always been the case. So I wanted us to talk about that angle. It's a very gray area to navigate, but I think both of us can talk about it and actually get into it a little bit better. So
mhm.
we're gonna follow this up with a couple of questions, and
Mm.
maybe that will help us build up the conversation. So the first question was, when did you first realize that your dream and what was expected of you might not be the same thing?
I will say, so I'll give a bit of context. So
Of
growing up, I
course.
never grew up in like an extra strict household that has this idea of what I'm supposed to become. And so for a lot of the struggles of my generation in Africa, like you mentioned, of there is a specific job, a specific career they want you to pursue, but yours is completely different. I never really had to fight with that struggle much. Um, the path that I want to take is unconventional. And so what I mostly had to kind of, I wouldn't say fight, but kind of battle with in a way, I guess, was explaining what that path was. Because it's unconventional, because there's no one else doing what I want to do, then I just kind of have to go through the everyday of almost justifying every decision that I make towards that. But I will say that I never really had like a huge like shift or like powerful moment where I just like, I realized this is my dream, this is what they want from me. But I will say that growing up, for a really long time, I wanted to be a lawyer. And so that was the conventional job. That aligns with what the
Same,
African parents want.
same actually.
And I joined debate because of it. I started building skills because of it. I wanted to be a lawyer for a really long time. And so where a little bit of friction came was when, so I worked at a law firm. I did an internship when I was in high school and I absolutely hated it. I remember sitting there and I was like, you know what? I don't love this. I don't enjoy this. This feels really boring. I don't think this is what I'm created for. And for a really long time, I wanted it, not because of courts, not because of attorneys, not because of none of that. I couldn't figure out exactly what it was. I just knew that I wanted to be a lawyer. But then sitting in that office and realizing, actually, this isn't for me, I remember letting go of that idea. And my parents, it took them a little while to like catch up to that because it's like, you've been wanting to be a lawyer. Why don't you want to be a lawyer anymore? And it's like,
Yeah,
they make a lot of money and there's a lot of opportunities and there's all these things.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
so it took a little, there's a bit of friction in that way, but nothing too crazy because it was quickly followed up with, okay, what do you want to do? And I remember just having absolutely no idea. And so I was like, you know what? I'll just go for business just because it's business. Like I know I'll pass it. I was supposed to do it anyway as a pre-law degree. So might as well just continue that plan and make it an independent degree. And then down the line, I remember realizing what I loved about law wasn't the law. It wasn't about none of that. It was about the speaking. What was most powerful for me was seeing them speak and them having like really good content and being powerful speakers. But that came what 6 years later. And
Yeah.
that was, I guess, the moment where I realized I don't want the that aligns with things that I love, which is writing, speaking, and research, and all this among the bubble. And so at that point, I was working in banking because I worked in banking for a while. It's like, well, like I don't know if I want this for myself. I'm in the world of finance, but I don't want this for myself. I want to get into a space where I could use social media to advocate for the things I love and I'm passionate about, and to speak and to put myself out there to attract opportunities that actually align with what I want for myself. And they had a moment of, okay, like there is no such thing as social media in their time. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
they don't understand how you could use that as a tool, much less actually be able to monetize your skills through it. And so it took a bit of a while, but I never had the biggest like transformational shift. As you can tell, it took a couple of years for it to just kind of like happen slowly and then surely get to this point. And even now, I can't say that I have a clear, I can give you a one line of exactly what I
Of
want to
where
do. I
you
don't know if it'll
actually
ever
thought, yeah.
exactly. I don't know if it'll ever exist. And every single day it develops even more and more. But I will say that up until this point, I figured out a lot of things that are not conventional, but I've had my parents on board. So I'm very grateful for that for sure.
Actually, me and you, I think, have had the same way of growing up, if I could say, because it was the same dream for me. I wanted to be a lawyer, but mostly for me, the influence was, see how you're like watching movies and you see they're so
Yeah,
powerful, they're making impact,
yeah,
they're
yeah,
freeing somebody from the terrible disaster of spending their whole life in jail and
yeah,
everything. And then for me it was that
yeah.
aspect, but then that was like when I was younger, back in primary school. When I got to secondary school,
Mm,
I got to understand that for you to have a specific career, there's certain subjects in school that
you
you
have to
have to
take.
be really good at. Of course, that you
Mm,
can't be, for example, a good pilot if you're not good at math and physics and all these things. So I was like, my career orientation changed a lot. I also did not have a household growing up, which kind of like narrowed me down. The reason why I wanted this
Mm,
topic was because I have had some of my um, friends and surroundings and
mm,
environment, people that I actually engage with who have later down the line told me I've been pursuing this certain career ever since I was in primary school. I've prepared for this, secondary school, prepared for this. I'm at university. I did this. I graduated. I got my degree, but I don't know what I'm going to do because I feel like
mm,
this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. You know,
mm.
I have a talent
And I
maybe.
will say, and I will say a good chunk of it, because I also like to, I think that this generation is very big on bashing parents that force their kids into certain careers. And I will say that it's important to paint the landscape. So if we're speaking, you earlier you spoke about the West, right? And how when you go abroad, you find more people pursuing what they love and what they're interested in compared to here in Africa. But they
Mhm.
also do have a lot more opportunities, a lot more money, bigger economies. Like there's so much more for them there. And so when you're in that space, it frees your mind to want more for yourself. Now, if you bring it back to Africa, there is, so everyone is in survival mode, right? So there's a lot of do what makes you money because we need the money. We
Yeah,
don't care about what your
I
passions
don't
are. We
care.
don't care about what your interests are because those are not giving us money. And yet, in a way, I think it's kind of ironic because Africans are the biggest hustlers, they're the biggest entrepreneurs. They have the capability to turn anything into money. They can monetize any skill. But I guess because of the restrictions, because of the environment that we're in, and because of like the limitations that we have, our parents think that what's best for us is telling us to go down the conventional path because they've seen that it's worked. There is very little risk in an environment where you could potentially lose a lot. You know what I mean? And so I think I like to empathize with them and not really bash parents that think that way. And I'd like to kind of paint that picture to kind of speak on where that comes from and why it's so different from the West,
Of
you know?
course.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, it kind of like transitions into our next question because I feel like there's something you mentioned about they have so many opportunities in the West that kind of like give somebody the platform to actually want more, even if they don't come from that background. Whereas people who are back home in Africa, it's more of your parents are pushing you to do a certain career, to do a certain to join a certain path because they've been there, they've seen that that's where the most money is. So maybe you have a better chance of like making it wealth wise. But in this case, I the question goes now and says, do you think African parents, our parents, push safe careers? Because I call these safe careers because for them it's safety for wealth. So it's with the environment that we have, with the setup and the system, you're most likely to get more money or just become rich if I could say because in most cases you go to primary school, you go to high school, you go to that's a mentality though that's still back home, which I feel like is also different from the mentality here. um you go to school, primary school, high school, university, you do extra studies that you do on the side, all in with the aim of making more money,
Mm-hmm.
becoming such a wealthy person. You get what I mean? Some people die when they've achieved this goal, and some people don't. Okay, they're still in pursuit of that when they get
Mm-hmm.
older or whatever. So I'm just saying, do you think African parents push safe careers? When I say safe careers, I mean doctor, I mean lawyer, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, I mean engineer, architects, and all of these respected careers back home because they don't believe in talent or because they're trying to protect us. So in this case, kind of like emphasize on that. Like you said, they're saying it because they've been that down that path and they know that you're most likely to get more money. But is it about the money at the end of the day? If you're working a 9 to 5 for a job that you don't like, yes, it's making a lot of money, but we've seen people burn out. We've seen people give up halfway. Like I said, some of my friends are graduating. They're telling me, I have been preparing for this my whole life, and now I'm at a 9 to 5 job. I talked to one of my friends yesterday, and she has started work recently, and she was like, I hate this. They're giving me a lot of money, but I hate this. And then
Mm-hmm.
but then, did your parent actually push you there because they don't like you or because they don't understand or believe in talent? Or was it something else?
It's not that. I would like to believe that it's not about believing in talent, because I it's human nature. Whether African parents, Western parents, like they believe in talent. I think the problem is they haven't seen enough people monetize their talent
Talent,
and
yeah.
get wealthy from it. Not just monetize their talent, but get
So
wealthy from it.
it's still like a 50-50 chance career. And they're not,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Because then if it's a parent in Rwanda, right? Or in Africa, anywhere else in Africa, and they're seeing the doctor that is wealthy, and they're seeing the musician that is taking them like 20 years to ever get, like, which wealth is very subjective, but to ever get a proper means of survival financially, then obviously they won't want their child to go down the path of the artist. You know what I mean? I think the biggest problem right now, and that's the clash between the generations, is we don't value things. You ask, is it always about the money? This generation wants to live good, but somehow it's not about the money, which I think that's extremely
Well, you can't
contradictory.
live good if you don't have the money. That's the key word.
Exactly, but what's being preached is it's not all about the money, but you
Mm-hmm.
want to live really good. So I think that just doesn't make any sense. But that's a different conversation altogether.
Yeah.
There is this generation that talks about it's not about money. What I value is purpose. A good chunk of it, more specifically Rwandan, coming from they've seen their parents work extremely hard and school, acquire that wealth, but they realized that the parents had to push on or push over a lot of their dreams. They constantly burnt out. They missed out on a lot of time with family because they were building and they saw what it cost. So
Mm-hmm.
because of that comes a generation which now thinks, I don't want to cost, like I don't want to lose all that as part of my journey of building wealth. I value traveling and I value being excited to go to work and I value all these things. And so you think that now it's not about the money. But really, it is about the money. You just don't want to have to sacrifice half as much as they did because they followed the path that they were not absolutely in love with. You know what I mean? And
Okay.
then at the same time, you realize you're going to have to work hard regardless. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to build that to begin with. This generation struggles with far more than following talent, following talent or following passion.
Exactly.
It's a very lazy generation as a whole, but
Mm-hmm.
extremely talented, extremely passionate. And so I think that's what we should start with as the underlying factor. And then build it on. And okay, let's choose what we love to do. So if it you love to do makeup, cool. Go down the path where you love to do makeup. But are you truly working out hard and showing up every single day, or are you
Yeah.
using that as an excuse to slack off? You
Or
know
are
what
you
I
just
mean?
doing it as like a hobby or
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly. So I think both generations have a lot to deal with, but when it comes to our parents, it's gonna take them a really long time to
to kind of like
understand
have a
that.
mind shift on that.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think what it's going to take most is seeing enough people do unconventional jobs, show up really hard every single day, and get successful while at it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they're already more open-minded now than the generation before. So our grandparents, you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? They're already doing a way better job. They're slightly more open-minded, but they're not where they would have to be for us to be on the same page.
Of course.
But I think right now, what this generation needs isn't for their parents to agree. It's the boldness to pursue it regardless.
To put in a lot
And
of
when I
work to
said,
actually prove
mhm,
the parents that there's another way that can
exactly,
work and still,
exactly,
become conventional.
exactly, exactly, because a lot of time is spent having arguments, trying to prove things, trying to make sure they're on the same page. Maybe they won't get on the same page until you start making the money,
Yeah.
until they start seeing you on TV, until they start seeing you in the magazines, until they start seeing proof that it works.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard for them to get it if you're still sitting. So if they're telling you, if you're saying, I want to paint, they're telling you, no, go to medical school because I want you to be a doctor. Sitting and going back and forth about how you want to paint is not going to do
Does
anything.
not solve the
But the moment,
problem.
exactly, but the moment you start to paint in your room on a little canvas or whatever, over time, the moment you start to sell those pieces and they can tell, oh, wait, you can actually pay bills with the things you love,
The things yeah.
then they start to catch up, right? But I think a lot of time is spent at the start before the work has
Arguing,
been put in.
going back and forth.
Exactly, going back and forth. Because honestly, I understand both generations in a lot of ways. It's just there needs to be a lot more work that's put in and not having this expectation that now our parents who have lived 40, 50, 60 years should now shift their mind to a
Just
generation that
because
has
you have something else that yeah. But
and
then
essentially and then also especially to a generation that has just started. You're talking to people that have lived, have been working for 40 years, have seen things, have seen success, have seen failure, have
And
seen
this
all things,
system has always worked for them.
and it's
Nothing
always
has
worked for them.
changed. Yeah.
Exactly. And now you're coming as a 20-year-old, you barely started to work, and you're convincing them that the idea you have is going to change the world. It's hard for them to see it that way. And so I highly encourage like our generation to just be bold enough to start. And now every time I say that, there is always that one person that'll tell me it's easy for you to say because your parents have given you the room to start, to do,
Which
to do
which
whatever you
before
want.
which before we go there kind of transitions again into our next question when we focus on
Yeah.
that generation that has the voice to say, oh, I am going to get into an unconventional career. When I say an unconventional
Mhm.
career, I mean these careers that are not usually, like you said, viewed as careers that you can do as an actual long-term project and just earn money, like you said, monetize it and, earn money
Mhm.
and be successful through the things that you love. You will find that most of the generation that does that is people that have that privilege to
Mhm.
say so, which is your
Mhm.
question. So my next
Mhm.
question before you get there is passion a privilege? If you can stand and say, "Oh, this is what I want to do," okay? I'm gonna find a way. Maybe you have miraculously moved from the going back and forth and talking about how this is good for you, like you said, and you actually put in the work and you're actually monetizing this thing. Is it a privilege? Because there's another side that does not even have that luxury of even outing those words out loud and saying, "Oh, I'm going to pursue my passion and I know very well that I can monetize it." Even if they have the brains and they're willing to actually put in the work to reach that success that is expected of them.
I wouldn't say that passion is a privilege, but pursuing the passion is the privilege.
Yeah,
So having it isn't necessarily a privilege, but I will say that it would be ignorant of me to say that it's not
a
pursuing your
privilege.
passion,
Yeah,
mainly because of two things. So I guess in a way, also having a dream can be, because it could go hand in hand with having a passion, but in a way, it could also be a privilege. But yeah, I think of the child in the outskirts of Rwanda who's never seen anything but a teacher or heard of the doctor or heard of the whatever, to now think that they could wake up and say, oh, you know what? I want to be a philanthropist. Like, they're not going to think of that. They haven't seen it. And so I will say, in a way, it is privilege because for you to be able to dream that big, you need some level of exposure. Not saying that there's some who are not the exception, but for a majority, you need the exposure, which exposure is a privilege because not everyone has that, especially on the continent. Passion in itself can also be a privilege because sometimes it costs a lot to be able to pursue your passion. It means letting go of certain things that are generating income for you. It means changing paths. It means being able to get a safety net, which not everyone has that safety net. I'm not
exactly.
saying every passion does require of that, but there's some that do.
There's
And
some
so
that
in a
do.
way, it could be exactly. And so in a way, it can be a privilege. But I will say it's not expected of people to follow their passions from day one. So a lot of this generation, again, I refer to it because I'm part of this generation. So I
Yeah,
see a lot of things.
we want to pursue
A
our
lot of people
passion right
from day one.
from the go.
Exactly. You're going to be showing up to that 9 to 5 and you don't want to show up until you're going to quit. Where's the capital going to come from for you to start that luxurious business you really want to start?
Exactly. If you don't come
That
from a
last
background
business,
that's
whatever.
able to offer you the starting point, you need to work somewhere to get the
Exactly.
money to
Exactly.
fund that passion, that dream.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's people have lost the art of long-term gain. People want this instant recognition, instant gratification, everything instant, which for a good chunk of it, I would blame social media because you see a lot of things happening instantly for people. Not really, but
Yeah.
that's just what you're seeing. And you believe that that's going to be your story, but you forget that they're the minority. That's probably less than 1% of how people actually like living. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so I will say that instead of having the mindset of, yes, it is a luxury, but it's a luxury you can work towards. You could sacrifice a lot. You could show up in the places you don't want to show up in. You could work towards it. So you could be in a space where you're able to pursue those dreams or those passions and endure that little bit of struggle, that little bit of uncomfort of being in a space that you don't want to be in because you know what you're working towards, because your dream or your what's the word you use?
Your
Passion.
passion, exactly.
It means just that much that you're willing to show up every single day at 4 a.m. at this hotel that you can't stand. But you're willing to do it every single day for 5 years because you know after the fifth year you have made enough money to then build that lash what boutique that you really want to have. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so as much as it's a luxury, I believe it's a luxury you can work towards because I also am such a firm believer in spirituality. And I believe that God places passions and dreams and all these things in us because if you believe it, if you could see it, then it can happen. So he's created you for far more than that 9 to 5. And so I believe that as much as it's a luxury, it could be achieved because you were created for maybe just that reason. Or simply you were given that, you're able to see that, given that vision, given that passion, given that dream, because you have the capability of achieving it. It's just the timeline piece.
And the timeline is really different for everybody. So as we
Yeah.
close, what's our last message that you think you would give in relation to our topic today? Of course, we're both part of this generation. We still have so much to learn as far as like careers and other aspects of our lives are expected of us. But we also have to keep in mind that we're still a generation, like I said, that's different from our last one, if I could say. Not so different, because there's some of us that, still have certain mentalities and certain ways of life that have been instilled in us since birth, but like we're still learning, we're still evolving. What do you recommend?
I will say be open minded, learn, read a lot, inform yourself, expand your mind, research, and not just from what you see online, but speak to people that have walked before you, that have lived before you, and have the humility to listen and actually learn. Not everything that they did will work for you, but also have discernment to know what to filter out and what to take on. And I will say be bold. It's needed. There is no path that won't require even a bit of boldness. And so
Absolutely.
be bold, chase things so unapologetically, show up every single day, have an excitement for what you're working towards, so that even on the hard days, you know that it's worth pushing through for because you're excited for what you're working towards. And
Exactly.
have write down your dream, write down your dreams, have a
What
notebook.
I said. That's what I
I'm
said. I always tell
yeah,
people, and I'm like, the reason why I wanted to put my blog as a writing, people have lost the
mhm.
art of reading and writing.
Yeah, no, they
Everybody
really
just,
have.
if I'm not seeing it on video, if I'm not
Yeah.
seeing it on my phone as like a small Instagram reel or TikTok, I'm
Hmm.
not
Hmm.
interested, you know?
Exactly, exactly, and it's huge. Like the Bible says, write it down and make it plain. It's Habakkuk, but it's a scripture, and I think it's important for people to have a journal, a book, some sort of thing. You don't have to be the biggest writer, but write it down, so that on the days where it just feels like, dang, I really know nothing at all. Like it's really hard. I can't figure it out. I'm so confused. I'm so lost. Because that happens. We go through that because life has just began. You know what I mean? I'm assuming that your audience is mostly people our age. Life has just started, careers have just started. So get a
Yeah.
book, write down your dreams so you don't forget them. So they serve as motivation for you to keep showing up. And just keep pushing through. Keep pushing through it. Life is so worth living. Your dreams are so worth chasing. And
And
every
every day
single
has
day.
something to offer, something new,
I, was-
another
I was going to
perspective of life that you probably did not plan or didn't see coming.
Yeah, and then another thing I will say is work extremely hard. So don't be lazy. Don't think that things are going to fall in your lap. This isn't some whole like you stand up and someone picks you. Knock on those doors, work extremely hard, show up every single day, push yourself. And in the long run, I'd like to believe that it's worth it because you get what you've been working towards.
Exactly. Thank you
Yeah,
so much, Audrey. This was
you're
so
welcome.
beautiful.
You're
I feel
welcome.
inspired. I feel there's a friend of mine, whenever I do something, she's like, "Ah, I'm influenced." And I'm like,
Yeah, I love
what
that.
is that influence? I mean, she says
I
it
love
to
that.
be sarcastic, but it's just amazing. I'm a big fan of your work. You did
Thank
mention
you.
somewhere in your stories that you're writing a book. We can't wait to see that.
Yeah, thank you.
Um, just go on Instagram if you're watching this to follow her. Her name is Audrey Gwiza. She's a beautiful Rwandan content creator, writer, speaker. She's literally the whole package. We aspire to be like you, but we're trying, of course. Thank you for accepting my invitation, for
Yeah,
being here, for
yeah,
being your
yeah.
gorgeous, inspiring self. And we can't wait to see you next time. We hope you will still be with us if we invite you a
Yeah,
next time because we
for
surely will.
sure. For sure. Invite me anytime.
Of course, and thank you so much. And right now, I'm going to school. I have, of course, a big agenda of things that of course, like I write down and I plan to do. But I still get
Yeah.
time to still talk to people. To still, I feel like this platform creates a space where you can sit down and learn a thing or two. Understand that
Mhm.
maybe whatever you're going through and whatever you're seeing, you're not the only one. There's somebody else struggling
Oh
with the
yeah.
same thing, having the
And it,
same thoughts, or even just
yeah.
different thoughts. Maybe it
Yeah.
helps
No, I'm
me every time I'm open to see if I'm going through something, if I'm facing a certain issue, there's somebody else facing the same thing. How are they navigating it in a different aspect, in a different perspective that's
mhm.
different from mine? And it kind of
Mhm.
opens me up. I'm almost done with school. I'm excited.
Oh, I love
And
that for you.
we're getting that degree, girl. And
Listen,
no, and soon, 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 I'm hoping to know where this path will lead me and my
mhm.
platform. And it's always a pleasure to have people like you to share.
I appreciate it. And I love what you're doing, by the way.
Thank you
Relatability
so
is the
much.
biggest thing. And so I love that you're creating a space for that. And I just know it's about to grow and be so big. And I'm rooting for you so, so much. Let me know if you need any help, if you need more chats, if whatever you need. Here for you
Okay.
always.
Thank you, girl.
Yeah,
See you next
you're
time.
welcome.
Goodbye.